r/ask Reddit. What's the stupidest way you've hurt yourself? I went to take a plate of Totino's pizza rolls out of the microwave. The plate was so fucking hot that I dropped it. Molten cheese bounced up and was burning through my ankle. I went to stick my foot in the sink to run it under cold water, as if I'm flexible enough to stand on one foot and get my leg up that high. I fell backwards and cracked my head like an egg. I had a 3rd degree burn on my ankle, 2nd degree burn on my fingers and 6 staples to the dome. 4 fucking pizza rolls at age 30. I was 8 years old and running home on my lunch break so that I could watch Inspector Gadget, which came on at noon. I decided it would be neat to look down at my feet while I ran, and next thing I know I've run full speed into a parked car. I think I laid like a dead body on the road for a good 5 or 10 minutes. It hurt so badly. I was late for my Inspector Gadget episode and never told anyone what happened. My brother was teasing me while I was doing homework. Think I was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, and after a few minutes, I snapped, took my pencil, and went to jab him with the eraser end, so as to not hurt him too badly and get him to shut up. To get a bit more force behind it, I decided to wrap my index finger over the other end, the end with the point. I'm sure you can guess what happened next. A lot of crying and a trip to the emergency room later. I had a pencil point being removed from my finger. When I was about 16, I was telling some story to my sister's boyfriend. I was rather animated about it and began to flail my arms about until I hit the glass fixtures of our ceiling fan and showered glass upon myself. Part of the glass cut around my nose and I began to rain blood. Was left with a nice scar and a decent story about situational awareness while speaking. When I was 5, I was rushed to the emergency room twice in the same week. First I slid down the banister as the door below swung open, and I crashed headfirst into the corner of the door. Then 3 days later I was playing on the radiator, slipped off, and smashed my head again. Doctors thought my parents were abusive and there was an investigation over it, apparently. Jumped from the roof of our house when I was 10 to see if it hurts or I'll survive. When I landed it was like an electric shock on my feet. Edit. I survived and yes it was stupid, but when you are a child you tend to brag anything to your friends. So yeah. Did hurt like hell though. I once went on my balcony to smoke a cigarette, only I forgot there was no balcony anymore because it was getting fixed. So I broke my leg falling 1 story down. Now the real irony was, my mother wanted to fix the balcony because it was old and she was afraid it might break off and I might hurt myself. Buried at the bottom, so I'm safe. I was at work in a high-stress office complex in Virginia. The work made you eat quickly and often at your desk. I was eating a baby carrot and tortilla chips when all of a sudden I get stabbed with the edge of a chip midway chewing a carrot. Blood all down my throat. The chip was sharp and I turned blue choking on baby carrots. Good times nearly getting killed by a chip and a carrot. Learn to slow down when eating. Anybody who has TMG knows you can aggravate it in the stupidest ways. When I was in high school I was eating an apple and my jaw completely froze as I was taking a bite. The apple was just hanging from my mouth suspended by my teeth. I looked like a horse with brain damage. I had to get my dad to extract the apple from my mouth. It hurt like a bitch for a long time. I couldn't chew or talk properly for months and my entire face was crooked because my jaw was stuck off to one side. It healed eventually, but later I set it off again by eating a cookie. I once set it off by yawning too wide. It sometimes goes off on its own for no reason. I wish I knew what it was like to have a working jaw. At work. When I moved to my new workplace, I was forced to switch from regular steel toes to heavy duty boots with a plate over the laces for my protection. While unloading a load of steel, the plate, that is there for my protection, caught on the lip of a steel beam I was stepping over on the stockpile and dropped me from standing up with my head 6 feet up to ground level. Very luckily, there was a 10x6 steel beam to catch me on the edge to keep my head from hitting the concrete floor, and I only had to get 12 staples and take a week off work. Of note, The only reason I bought the fucking boots in the first place is that the GM noticed I didn't have them and told me if I didn't show up next shift with them, I'd be sent home. Remember when your parents told you to tie your laces or you would hurt yourself? Well, they were right. I was that kid who ran with untied laces. I fell and instinctively put both my arms out. I landed on my right hand and arm and managed to snap my forearm and dislocate my wrist, as I had dislocated my wrist before, as I was accident prone. I attempted to pop it back in myself in panic. I can't describe the crunchy noise that my arm made or the pain I felt. I then had to walk to the nurse's office at my school and wait for my parents to pick me up. They didn't think it was serious. At the hospital the x-ray was a little extreme and I had to have surgery to correct my arm 14 years later, and my wrist still isn't the same and it still hurts in the cold. Life tip: tie your fucking laces. Tried to open a wine bottle with a knife because the cork was stuck inside, and my drunken self stupidly thought that if I cut around the cork with a knife, I could just pull it out. I almost cut off my entire finger and had to go to the emergency department. Also, as a child I was very tubby, particularly around my waist. One day I was frying something in a flat pan and I wondered how close I could get my stomach to the pan without burning it. I burnt it. And I still have a very slight scar to remind myself of how much of an idiot I can be. I was at work, very stressed and tired. There was a skateboard on the ground about 10 feet away from me. I didn't know how to skateboard beyond just being able to slowly roll around. We just kept it around to casually ride whenever we needed a break from our work. I saw the skateboard as I was pacing around and, without thinking, ran over to it and jumped on. As you would accept, it went flying out from under me and I slammed into the concrete floor. I just stayed there on the floor for a minute, baffled by what I had just attempted, while my hip bone throbbed from the impact. I have no idea where the impulse to do that came from, and my brain was too sluggish to stop myself before it happened. I'm so glad I didn't hurt myself more seriously, since I was the only one in the building. I was even more relieved nobody was there to see me do something so incredibly stupid. In 5th grade, I had to do a science experiment in which I dropped a penny and listened to the sound. I then had to see if the sound changed when the temperature of the penny was different. For the cold penny, I put in the freezer. For the hot penny, I placed it directly on top of a light bulb and left it on for a few hours. Realizing the light bulb might be hot, I turned off the light before grabbing the penny. However, I forgot the penny could also burn me, having been on the bright light for several hours. And that's how I, stupidly, got painful blisters on my fingers. When I was 6, my family got our first minivan. It was the mid-1980s. I was sitting in the middle seat on the driver's side and I noticed that there was a cool compartment in the molding and armrest under the window. So I opened it and saw this odd button. I pushed it and it just sorta sank down and clicked. A minute or so later I heard another click and it popped back out. So I picked it up and the bottom side was glowing orange. I was very curious about this strange silver pin with a glowing orange base, and as I turned it in my fingers to examine it more closely, I felt a horrible pain on my middle finger. I screamed and dropped it on the floor. I injured myself at age 6 on cigarette lighter. I'd never seen one before, especially in a rear seat. I was riding one of those playground spring animals. It was a donkey, and I had my feet on the pegs and hands on the handlebars, but I was spooning it rather than sitting on it like normal. So I yell out to my friends, "Hey, look, I'm riding an ass." As soon as I'm done yelling that, I fall off the back. The donkey rocks forward, then rocks back, and slams into me, breaking off a half circle of my front teeth. As a 4-year-old I tumbled over a couch, fell on the other side on a Duplo Lego lying around, and broke my collarbone. As a 12-year-old I stood up on an office chair with wheels to get something off of a high shelf. It twisted. I fell and broke my elbow. And as a 22-year-old I was waiting in the men's room to go to the toilet in a bar. Super long queue. The girls won and the lady cleaning the toilets gave us permission. A drunk guy pissed on the one next to him. The other dude didn't appreciate it and punched the drunk guy. I was right behind him and he fell over with his head against my nose. Broke my nose and smashed my head against the wall behind me.